So is this the same frog from the bowl?
This is the frog that come out of this mold.
Was it Slipcast?
This is Slipcast. It just set a while, got a nice thick wall on it. He was fired, this is low fire clay. It fires at a different temperature than our bowl. The bowl's fired at about 2300. This one's about 2100. Just the difference in the clay.
So how did you combine, if you've got a frog that fires at a low temperature and a bowl that fires at a high temperature, how did they get together?
This bowl broke before it got fired, so we trimmed it out, had a area taken out of it. We trimmed it out, glazed it, and fired it. And then we fired the frog, and frog is held in with epoxy. So I'm gonna find some paint or fingernail polish about the right color, and frog is gonna get painted in. He's designed to where the hole for this is a yarn bowl, and the yarn goes through a hole in the back end of the frog and comes out here. And it's just another way of combining different procedures.
So you've combined a low fire frog, a high fire pot. They were fired separately and then they were put together. Could I, if I planned it right, could I make this frog and make it attached before firing to this bowl? What would I have to do?
You would have to use cone 10 clay slip.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that would be a possibility where it could be put together with slurry, just like the press mold, or either that or just fired separately and then still put back in with epoxy. But
could I press mold this frog?
Probably not, just because of the detail on things like the toes.
Right.
I don't think you could get the full detail on it. It would
Maybe
be fun
I could
to try.
press mold it, and then I could come back in with some rubber tip tools or some carving tools and try to capture some of that texture.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
There's a lot could be done with the frog.
And that might be easier to use the press mold to get the basic shape, but then use the carving techniques or the sculpting techniques to get some of the detail and things like that. And then, of course, I would use those carving and sculpting techniques to make that attachment so that the frog has sort of a logical connection to this bowl.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned cone 10 slip, but that's not what you've been using.
No, this is cone 6. This is actually a commercially made casting slip. I have made some cone 10 casting slip. Had some problems with it because I've got to put some deflocculants in it and figure out what it's going to take so where it sets up proper. If you get too much water in it, then it just sets and doesn't dry properly in the mold.
Right. Like this one's been sitting for a while and it already would have settled a little bit.
Yeah, it should be. It should have settled by now. But
now you mentioned that this was cone 6 slip. Does that mean it's going to melt at our bisque temperature?
no, our bisque temperature is cone 06.
Remember that.
Which is about 1835, which is considerably lower. Like I say, cone 6 is about 2,100. Our cone 10 is roughly 2,300. Cone 06 is the 0 in front of the number indicates that that's like a negative. So in other words, a midline would be a 0. As you go down away from midline, 02 is closer than to the midline than 06.
So 02 is hotter than a cone 06.
Right. Cone 4 is hotter than cone 2. So it's a line that works, it's a number line that goes both ways.
Like negatives in doing math.
It's a number line that goes both ways. The farther you get from the center, then the more radical the change.
And of course, if we tried to fire this whole thing now, we'd have some trouble because the epoxy would burn.
The epoxy would burn out, the frog would fall on the shelf and melt.
Thank you.